Welcome to the Miller Report, Real Clear Journalism. I'm Maggie Miller. Today we are joined by Peder Zane with Real Clear Investigations. And Peter, we're going to be talking about some internal articles that Real Clear Investigations has done, as well as some of the ones that we've posted to the site. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. I'm always love to take an opportunity to talk about great investigative journalism, not just that we're doing, but that lots of our peers are.
I mean, Real Clear is known for putting forth other peers' work, so it's great to be able to touch on those pieces as well. I think you mentioned a little bit before we kind of touched base, and you wanted to talk a little bit about the Reuters article that came out with regards to North Korea and the Ukraine. You want to touch base a little bit on that?
Reuters does great investigative work, and I thoroughly urge everyone to go check out their site. But their most recent article talked about North Korea's support for Russia's war effort in the Ukraine. Now, I think most of us who follow the news know that they have sent many soldiers there who have often served as cannon fodder. And it's really underscored how repressive that regime is, that they can get people to travel 1,000 miles away and often end up dead, the first ones that the Russians send in to die. What this article does is it tells us not only have they sent 14,000 troops, including 3,000 replacements for those who have died, but that they have provided a lion's share of the munitions that the Russians have fired at the Ukrainians. And that was some really good original reporting.
I mean, it really begs the question, what would the Ukraine war look like without this support from North Korea, right? I feel like it would have changed the entire dynamic.
Absolutely. And the fact that it is one of the poorest countries in the world somehow can send millions of shells and ballistic missiles is pretty incredible, and again speaks to the strange priorities of the regime in North Korea.
And it almost makes you wonder, how does this deepening military relationship between North Korea and Russia kind of reshape global alliances, power dynamics, and what can international communities, what actions can they take with this sort of thing happening?
It really seems like, to harken back to George Bush's axis of evil, there really is this connection between Russia, North Korea, Iran, to some extent China, though they're getting at loggerheads now. But you really see this axis that's at least in many ways opposed to what we are trying to do, mutually supporting one another. There have been other articles Reuters has done on how Iran has helped Russia evade the sanctions on their oil. So they really are working closely with one another. And then, of course, there are the rebels in Yemen who are making it difficult to move other oil supplies through the Red Sea. So it's a real powder keg. But this article it's always hard to report on North Korea, and the specificity with which they report these numbers. And also, I have to say, one of the things that's just been amazing about journalism is so many news sites now have just incredible graphics capabilities. And so their use of maps showing you, where the missiles are going, how they're being fed through X, Y, and Z it's truly amazing. For all of our concerns about the direction of journalism with basic values of fairness and partisanship, the tools that many of these legacy media outlets have to report stories is breathtaking. And this Reuters report is a good example of that.
I was just going to mention, I believe they start their piece with an audio that you get to listen to. So definitely go ahead and take a look. It's a very interesting.
Oh, and there's been others. I think probably Reuters, I know the New York Times and maybe the Washington Post have just done some phenomenal work using cell phone records to figure out where troops have been, but also intercepted cell phone calls to hear how Russian soldiers in particular on the front lines were unhappy with the war, the way that they were able to use those recordings, and then the way they packaged them And it's really incredible. This war is also turning. I don't know if this is the first video game war, but when you also take into account in Ukraine that about 80% of the casualties now are from drones.
Wow.
So it's an altogether different kind of war against very difficult adversaries, as this close relationship between Russia and North Korea is proving. Because when you have adversaries that don't care about the lives of their peoples to a great extent, that makes them doubly hard to defeat.
Well, to kind of switch pages a little bit over to one of the internal reports that is just came out this week, we've got the Stacey Abrams story. Paul Sperry did this investigation where the former Georgia gubernatorial candidate, rising Democratic figure, was under scrutiny following detailed report by Real Clear Investigations revealing that her net worth surged millions of dollars between 2018 and 2022. And she's never been charged for a crime, but the report does paint a picture of blurred lines between public service and personal gain. And this raises broader questions about political influence. So my question to you would be, do you believe Stacey Abrams' financial trajectory is an outlier, or is this part of a broader trend in American politics?
We reported on the story in part because we were observing, and we're certainly not the only ones, who are observing this trend of people who become enriched either while they're in office or they're connected to political outfits. And there's certainly, one of the things that Doge has showed us is the amount of federal money that is funneled through non-governmental organizations. And James Varney, in his reporting on the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, showed us time and again how this $27 billion Biden initiative to reduce climate gases has benefited people connected to the Democratic Party. No doubt Republicans probably have their own friends that they are enriching. But so the way journalism works is you see that, you say, geez, here are people who are enriching. Let's go find others. And Stacey Abrams stood out in part because she's connected to one of the major beneficiaries of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, Rewiring America. And she has a particularly checkered financial past. She was a star student. She went to Yale Law School. She's never been married. She never had children, but she has been in financial difficulties until about 2018. As Paul Sperry showed, she's had tax liens. She didn't pay her taxes for years, it seems, according to the reporting. And so she had difficulty. And the irony is that she had tax problems and she was a tax lawyer. Although her specialty was in dealing with non-governmental organizations. And so after her failed run for the governor of Georgia, in which she became a party hero to some extent, she has, Paul reported, helped create more than a dozen NGOs. She's figured out how to do that. They've all been trying to help low-income people. You know, they all on paper seem to have goodwill in their backs. But she has, during that time, gone from having extreme money difficulties to having a net worth of over $3 million, at least.
Millions.
Now, in fairness, you know, one of the things in reporting is we can't look at her tax returns. There's so many. So what we do in reporting is we say, here's somebody who had money problems very quickly, or she was engaged in work that benefited from taxpayer dollars. Her net worth seems to have increased. This has happened. Here's the most that we can tell you about how that happened, but we don't know. She's, for instance, written 8 romantic thrillers. We don't know what the royalties are for those. She's written memoirs. So she has streams of income, but those streams certainly include taxpayer dollars, and that makes it interesting. And a lot of journalism, you know, the best journalism doesn't always give you the final answer. It just says, this is interesting. This is what we could learn. This is what we know. And this is what we don't know. And we think it's newsworthy because not just she's a public figure, but she fits into a pattern which people are becoming aware of others who have also benefited from taxpayer dollars.
In the mentioning of her book, even you can see that, I mean, Sperry's reporting showed that it is almost garbled into when she was going out on trail and doing all these things. So it is interesting to see. And it's, you read the piece and you make the assessment for yourself. So I think that's
she's not alone, though.
No,
to be
definitely.
fair, and like you had pointed out, she hasn't been charged with a crime. It's just, this is, and a lot of people say what's, an old saying is, what's troubling is what you are allowed to do.
Mm-hmm. It's like you don't know where is that line, and if it's not definitive, then people are going to push the bounds.
Exactly.
Well, another piece that was not done by Real Clear Investigations, but that was on our site, was about the Texas gambling story. Do you want to give a little bit of insight as to what exactly all played out? It's very interesting.
Yeah. So the Wall Street Journal did this incredible piece on that. There are evidently these syndicates, maybe a handful of them, that use these Wall Street techniques, algorithms, crushing data analytics with lotteries in particular. And they figure out when is the right time to start playing the lottery because the odds have shifted in your favor. And this one syndicate that bets about $10 billion annually, believe it or not, figured out that the time was right to invest in the Texas lottery. And the gist of it was, if they bought one ticket, there was a $95 million jackpot. Mm-hmm. Every combination, there were 25.8 possible combinations, all of which were a $1 ticket. So if they bought a $1 ticket for like 99.3% of the numbers, because they actually knew that some numbers get picked so often that the jackpot would be split too many times, it wouldn't be worth it. So they knew that too. But they bought $25.8 million worth of tickets, which required them to get a whole bunch of ticket punching machines. They were in a hotel room and were churning out 100 tickets a second for several days. And then they obviously then had to put them in boxes so they could find the winning tickets and all of that. But by spending $25.8 million, they got the one winning ticket in a Texas lottery and got a $60 million payoff. So who knew that they did that? And the other thing that was really fascinating was evidently they can do this with scratch-off tickets too, mm-hmm. and just track the prizes, how many of the, if a big prize hasn't been bought yet, how many tickets are out. And then I guess they go and scoop up all the tickets. But just, if there are ways to make money, smart Americans are going to figure out how to give themselves an edge. So it was surprising. It was the kind of thing where you think, why didn't I think about that?
I mean, if you've got that much money laying around to be able to play, they're still really, to an extent, if you think about it, they're still playing the lottery, because there's that very, very tiny chance that it's not going to work out in their favor and that they just wasted millions of dollars.
And it happens sometimes.
Statistically, they're like, no, it shouldn't happen, but you never know because they didn't buy everything.
It was just one of those great stories where just, everybody's played the lottery from time to time, and just people figuring something out, and you just wouldn't think that it's worth it, that there are so many possible combinations. It was just one of those stories you go, that's really cool.
You can't help but be impressed. You're like, yes. You know what? You did it. But that also brings the question, is it unethical, illegal, or just extremely clever? Where do we draw that line between smart strategy and exploiting a system?
Well, again, you go back to what's legal, and there were a bunch of politicians, according to the Wall Street Journal, that were upset about the gaming of the system, but it all appears to be legal. And until they say that you can't, I guess they could say nobody's allowed to buy more than 100,000 tickets. I don't know what they would do, but just chapeau to them. They found a way to play the game better than other people. And again, they also had $25.8 million worth of tickets and figured out how to get all of those machines. It was a lot of work.
It was heavy lifting. They earned their money to an extent, even though I'm pretty sure the article went into some issues with, the way they went about getting these tickets and getting everything done in the period of time. So that's, I guess, another story. And then finally, let's wrap things up with James Varney's most recent Real Clear investigation.
So that story, like some of the stories we write, come from other outlets report things that are surprising to us, and we feel that they didn't take the same angle that we would have. So ProPublica, many months ago, when there was the first discussion of Trump's intention of possibly closing the Department of Education, said that tens of thousands of civil rights lawsuits were imperiled. And I didn't know. So that's basically, when the editor doesn't know, that means nobody knows. So I didn't know that there were tens of thousands of civil rights lawsuits brought by the Department of Education. And we looked into it because we felt like there was a lot of the story that ProPublica's piece tended to present these as, all protecting fundamental rights of people, which many of them do. And ProPublica did a very fine job on the story. But we asked the question, why are they doing this in the first place? And what are they accomplishing? And we basically found that it seems as though this is another lever for the federal government to have influence over local school districts. So in the sort of key nut graph in this story, anybody can make a complaint to the federal government's Department of Education. You can do it online. You can do it anonymously, and every complaint will get looked into to some degree. And you don't have to, which was very surprising to us, even though many people do try to resolve it at the local level, you don't have to. And so what Varney reported was this system that both does some good and protects people's civil rights, but it also is a way for the Department of Education's lawyers to stay busy and to constantly have interactions with local school districts to monitor them and have oversight. The one huge question that we could not answer, it seems that of the 12 to 20,000 civil rights complaints that are lodged every year, last year it was 20,000. It was 10,000 when Biden first took office, but 6,000 or 7,000 of those are filed by one individual who no one could identify for us.
I think that's the crux of the problem right there. It's, you don't need the personal connection to the school. You don't have to live in the same area, and you don't even need to just, it can be done. There can be duplicates, there can be serial filers. It just creates this kind of big issue where it's like, where is this coming from? And if there's no oversight making sure that this is a legitimate claim, then how do we know we're actually helping people and we're not just wasting money, wasting everything?
I think they probably help a bunch of people, and many of these lawsuits, especially before Biden, the majority of them were for disabled people who needed accommodations and didn't feel like they were getting what they were due from their local school districts. Since then, the Biden administration opened up more of the floodgates for racial and gender discrimination. I would say that what you're seeing time and again in all of these issues is that the government is not efficient. So it does lots of good things, but it does it in a way that does not streamline operations and have triage to figure out what we should be doing and what we shouldn't. So it allows critics of the government, ironically, to go after government programs that do a lot of good because there is so much waste and abuse in them. And I think that this piece, again, we're not there to solve the issue. All we're there to say is, hey, this number doubled under Biden. It's reached 20,000. Here's how this system works. And it was reminiscent in some ways, too, of earlier reporting we did on campuses, if people remember the bias response teams. And so if you were concerned about somebody doing something you didn't like, you could make an anonymous phone call and have the school look into it. And so that also was, I think a development that people would be interesting to know. And then it's up to our readers to decide what they think about it. But we just wanted to present this information. Here's what we found.
Journalism is all about opening people's eyes and then letting them make informed decisions. So I think these were some great examples of work that was found on Real Clear Investigations that do just that. Is there anything you'd like to add as we wrap things up?
No, I just hope that people come to our site. We not only produce original investigations, but we, like RealClearPolitics, we aggregate, but we don't aggregate opinions. We aggregate investigative work and deep dive reporting. And we update the site every day with 6 to 8 news stories from all around the media ecosphere. And you'll find stuff there that you won't find aggregated in other places. And we're proud of what we do.
Many different viewpoints, viewpoint diversity. That's what it's all about, right?
Exactly. And good solid reporting.
Good solid reporting. Yes. Good solid reporting. Well, Peder, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
That was it for the Miller Report, Real Clear Journalism. We'll see you next time.